Oh!
I would ask you to move Chromebooks out of the splash zone, or you need to close them so that the class is up. If you wish to come into the splash zone, you may do so. If you wish to move out of the splash zone, you may do so. Alright, this is so that you will never, and I mean never, close that Chromebook for me. Paper going up if you want to put that monitor.
Alright. Get your notes for yesterday. Get your Chromebooks. Follow along with what we're doing. Landon got that.
In my demonstration here, this bottle is what is inside the Soviet Union? Water. What's inside the Soviet Union? And when my bottle does not have a
Go ahead and get a Chromebook. You're going to follow along like we've been doing. You should be concerned about what I have in my hands.
I'm not.
And why I need the megaphone for today. If I were you, I'd be concerned about that.
You know, Swanson, you should just start taking my phone home.
Here, got it. Austin got it. Austin, you just got splashed. There he said.
Albania. Go back to Albania is inside communism has spread, but check this out. If I try to snatch Albania from communism, what is happening? There is, in fact, a story of freedom fighters inside of Congress trying to rise up against the Soviet.
Hey, you can get a Chromebook. You can follow along like we've been doing. And Kate got it. Look at my nuclear warhead.
So once it comes to inside of communism, you recognize that it's wrong. The statement is, make sure that you never forget your statement. I would ask you to move Chromebooks out of the class.
Thanks for yesterday. Chromebook again.
Close them so that the class is out. If you wish to come into the class, you can exit so. If you wish to go out of the class, once again, guys, so that you'll have
All right. Anybody else want your yesterday? Get some notes.
I saw it. I was like, he might as well have done that.
Let's watch Austin get got on the video here.
In my demonstration here, this bottle is the Soviet Union. Okay, this bottle is the Soviet Union. What is inside the Soviet Union? Water. What's inside the Soviet Union? Communism inside of the Soviet Union. And when my bottle does not have a lid, what can that communism do?
There was.
What do we know about
I mean, Hayden, to be fair, I did extend the splash zone.
Yeah.
I did say you are now in the splash zone, so.
You didn't say I was.
All right, pencils, notes. You can have a Chromebook to go to stay with me. Please don't get ahead of me. You'll miss what I'm saying. But you can have a Chromebook to stay with me. So now you good? Christian?
No, I'm not.
Anybody else need the notes from yesterday? Get your binder.
Why can't you see water if it's clear?
That sounds like one of Haven's questions.
What was that?
That is crazy.
Think about it. How can you see water?
That sounds like one of the questions that's on Haven's list.
Your muscles?
All right, we situated.
Oh.
So now, for real, I'm going to ask you to stay with me on the slides. I'm not stupid. I saw some of y'all getting ahead. Stay with me on the slides. It's so that you don't have to go backwards. Hey, Mr. Swanson, slow down. So I don't have to slow down, but it is so that you have it in front of you. There are several slides per topic, so you don't have to be on the exact slide. If you're kind of leaning forward 1/2 step, but don't be 10 slides ahead. That's just stay with me. All right, stay with me. Questions before I get started?
I have a pencil, Jack.
I gotta look like.
Look at that. Look at this team. Look at this team we got here.
Well, I'm sorry.
We good? Ready to go? All right, because we are. I hope you remember yesterday we started the Cold War. If it's so cold, how come it doesn't just put on a jacket? I don't care how bad of a dad joke it is, you're never going to forget it. That's what we started yesterday. But today, be serious with me for a second. Today, this day in history, April 19th, 1995, I think most of you remember, I gave you a full presentation on this day last year about the Oklahoma City bombing. This is an anniversary day, something that's kind of very important to my family's life. My dad was 2 blocks south of the building on that day. I'll give you the real quick summary because I gave you the full presentation last year. On this day, April 19th, 1995, the American terrorist Timothy McVeigh, he drove a Ryder moving van, a Ryder truck full of explosives, up to the federal building in Oklahoma City. He lit the fuse, and at 9:02 a.m., the bomb went off. And as we say, history changed forever in that time. These are the scenes of that day. Many, many powerful pictures come from that day. And this is what I remember as a first grader. I was in first grade at the time that it happened. My mom was actually on the phone with my dad. She heard the blast. It's become a very important part of our personal family history. This is the Swansons on that day. That is me in the lower right. I've got 2 brothers. There's 3 of us total. But my youngest brother on that day, and in this picture, is in my mother's belly. She was pregnant with him on that day. That's why they were on the phone with each other. We were going to the ultrasound earlier that day. That's why I wasn't in school, because I was going to go to the ultrasound with them. And from that, we kind of saw history unfold before our eyes on the TV screen. This is a kind of an overview picture of Oklahoma City. And my dad was 2 blocks south on the non-blast side, pretty much where that red circle is. So he was on the non-blast side, but even so, he was thrown across his desk. As he was talking to my mom on the phone, he had his feet propped up on his desk like a cool guy, and the blast pushed him across his desk, which we believe is a God thing, right? We believe that was protection. Now, I can't say why some people died and why some people didn't, but had my dad not flown across his desk, behind him, his very, very heavy window pane crashed forward onto the desk. And had he been sitting traditionally at a desk, he probably would not have flown across the room, and he may well have been crushed by that window pane. So we believe that he was protected in that moment. What I want to give to you, I don't want to highlight the bad guys. I don't want to highlight the how. You know, I'm not going to get into the semantics of the bomb, but I want to highlight the response of Oklahoma City and the aftermath. In the aftermath, Oklahoma rallied around each other. The country rallied around Oklahomans, and the world really sent rescuers and rescue workers, disaster relief workers to Oklahoma City. What became established at that time, on my t-shirt here is the phrase the Oklahoma Standard. Oklahoma Standard refers to the best way to do disaster relief. And it refers to how smooth and how seamless the disaster and recovery efforts were in Oklahoma City. Obviously, it's a bad thing that you have to recover from any disaster at all. But the way that outside agencies were brought in, people from all across the country, fire trucks, fire stations just hopped into their trucks and went and started digging through the rubble, looking for survivors. It's called the Oklahoma Standard. The way that Oklahomans were hospitable and gracious, full of gratitude, This is referred to as the Oklahoma Standard. So I'm very proud to be from Oklahoma. And obviously this is something that's woven into the fabric of our city's history. Happening at 9:02 a.m. So in Oklahoma right now, it's 10:42. At 9:02 a.m., about an hour ago, the whole city would have stopped for 168 seconds of silence in remembrance. The reason it's 168 seconds is because 168 people died on that day. As we talk history, we can talk about textbooks, textbook material. We can think about notes. You guys can grumble about vocabulary. Is it on the test, right? Landon, is it going to be on the test? It's all going to be on the test. I would ask us to think about people as individuals, right? We can say big numbers like 6,000, 600,000, a million, whatever. We can say big numbers, but I would ask us to remember that every person we're talking about has a story, is a husband or a wife, a mother or a father, a niece and nephew. And in Oklahoma City, 168 people died on that day, including 19 children. There was a daycare inside of the office building, and 19 children were killed as well. One rescue worker, one lady who came to help. She was hit by falling debris later in the day. She died of her injuries. So 168 total people died in the Oklahoma City bombing. I have something here. I got to visit. We went to Oklahoma in February just for a family visit. Got to visit the memorial, the museum. Should you ever pass through Oklahoma City, I absolutely recommend to you to make that a part of your stop. What I got this out of museum store. This is the Oklahoma City Fire Department hat, and to me, this is what I remember about the good guys. This is the logo I remember. Later in time, we'll have a similar disaster relief effort in New York City. At that time, Oklahoma City got to rally and support its sister city in New York City following September 11th, 2001. Out of that comes FDNY or NYPD. Well, I remember Oklahoma City Fire. So I want to honor the heroes and remember the heroes in class here today. And then one more thing as I wrap up this fast blitz opener to our class. This is actually a piece of the building itself that was destroyed on that day. My dad was able to get this due to his proximity, due to his how close he worked. In the following days, the aftermath, there's a lot of rubble, and people started to receive parts of the building. I don't think of it as a souvenir. I don't think of it as something to collect, but it kind of represents the building that was broken. And then, of course, what I think about is how the city has recovered in the 27 years since. So I'm going to pass this around. I'm a nerd for artifacts. I like to think about the history that I'm holding in my hand. So I'm going to pass this around, and you can think that this was actually part of the federal building that was destroyed, came from the rubble right there. So I'll pass this around. Just ask you to be respectful and careful with the artifacts I pass around in class. And with that, we are going to start pushing into the Cold War. Got a lot to get to today. And it ends in the gym. It ends with this volleyball demonstrating something specific in the gym. So I want to get to our demonstration, but it's going to take a lot of talking to get there. So lean into it. Hear me on my facts. I see some of you are already kind of a vocab term ahead of me. That's fine. I appreciate your work. I think this is a method that's working. I'm not going to be like, hey, look up, shut the Chromebooks. But you got to stay with me, okay? So let's go. Reminder, these are the Cold War presidents, Truman through Reagan. We're walking our way through their accomplishments at this time. These are the presidents of the modern era. Bush through Obama, that's as far as our class is going to go. And then we will talk a little bit of Trump and Biden, because that's the history that's nearest to us. I know you're interested in it. I'm going to try to explain some recent events and recent history even. That's important. You guys are thinkers. I'm going to try to bring you that recent history. Reminder of how we got to where we are in our class. What is brinkmanship?
Going to the river edge and back up.
Yeah, what two countries?
USSR.
Soviet Union. I hear several of you correcting your words there. That's good. USSR, United States. The presidents represented here. They're both sitting on a bomb, finger hovering over the button. This is brinkmanship. The phrase mutually assured destruction. What does that mean?
If you destroy us, we're really going to
That's right. If you shoot one bomb at us, we're going to send 100 back at you. And guess what, buddy? We're going to knock each other off the face of the earth. Do you want that? Both sides resisted sending missiles towards each other because of this. You shoot at me, I'm going to shoot back at you, and it's just not going to be good for anyone. Mutually assured destruction. These are our big three from yesterday. What was the Truman Doctrine? What did the Truman Doctrine state? It might be on the notes right in front of you. Remind me. We will support any nation threatened by communism. I call this the playbook. Inside of the playbook, there are a lot of plays. The Truman Doctrine is the playbook, and inside of it are a variety of plays. One of those plays was the Marshall Plan.
That's to give money to struggling countries in Europe.
Boom, marshalling money. We're going to rebuild our friends in Western Europe. It's not an even distribution of money. We do play favorites. We give more money to our BFFs, but it is money. Marshall is money. What about containment? We're going to draw the line. Certain countries have fallen to communism. Think about my water bottle, right? They are inside of communism. They're drenched. There's no getting them back. If you crack the lid, what happens? Austin, Christie, are you nervous? I'm not going to do it. If you crack the lid on containment, communism might spread. So we draw the line. We recognize certain countries are lost to communism. Not that we don't want to rescue them, just that it's not safe to do so. But we are going to intervene as much as necessary to make sure other countries don't fall to communism. What was the first place we put containment into action?
Korea.
Korea. Yeah, so we had a lengthy conversation about the Korean War. This is containment in action. Now we're going to talk about the Vietnam War. More containment in action in Vietnam. Could spend a whole course learning about Vietnam. In fact, some college courses spend their time only on the Vietnam War. Do the best I can in about 20 minutes to tell you Vietnam. We got to move on to the next topic. Hope it's something you become interested in, become a lifelong learner, as I say with all of our topics. Remind me of what is the domino theory of containment.
That you gotta draw a line like these over here, you're done.
You're describing containment. I mean, domino. What is the domino theory?
What's happening to one and continue to
If one country falls, the next is likely to fall, the next is likely to fall. And in fact, we actually even outlined a specific list. We weren't just taking guesses. We said, hey, China is communist. China is likely to influence Korea, which is likely to influence Vietnam, and on down the line, which this is precisely why we get involved in Korea and now Vietnam. Here's a couple terms to know. This is kind of up front. As you're writing definitions, and this is good language. I'm not going to tell you it's not. I am going to elaborate on each of those quite extensively. So the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, the Tet Offensive, and then what is Vietnamization? Pretty tough word to say. Vietnamization. We're going to talk about each of these. First, how did we get involved in the first place? The Gulf of Tonkin resolution. A lot of words on the screen. It's going to help me tell the story. I know you got it in front of you as well, so I'm not going to read every word off the screen. I'm just going to tell you the story the best I know it. Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Here we have ourselves involved in North Vietnam. It's the Gulf. It's called Tonkin. What do we know about water? Water is? Water is life. Water leads to port cities. Port cities are commerce. So this body of water is pretty significant. I'm going to show you. I can show you on a map right here. This is Secretary of Defense McNamara pointing at the Gulf of Tonkin. That is the Vietnam north and south. It runs the whole length of the coastline there. He's pointing to the Gulf of Tonkin. So at the Gulf of Tonkin, there's some U.S. Navy ships that are helping the South Vietnamese run raids into North Vietnam. We are not technically involved with boots on the ground, but we are assisting the South Vietnamese run raids into North Vietnam. We are using the South Vietnamese to fight a proxy war against communism. Well, August 2nd, 1964, followed by another incident on August 4th, 1964, it is said that North Vietnamese ships attacked 2 U.S. Navy vessels in the Gulf of Tonkin. It gets a little fuzzy. It was a foggy morning. Were they fishing boats? Were they actually military boats? Did they really shoot? History's a little fuzzy. But as so often happens with these things, do you remember the Maine? Do you remember the Lusitania? We take these incidents and we shape them into what we want them to be. If we wanted to go to war, we could phrase this as an incident where the North Vietnamese attacked us. That's exactly what we do. President Johnson responds by ordering an air attack into North Vietnam. It's a proportional attack. Okay, they attack a military asset. We're going to attack a military asset. He does do it with congressional approval. That's a big deal, right? He's not acting by himself. He does it with congressional approval. From this is Secretary of Defense McNamara. He's illustrating the point to the American public. Does he look like someone else you know and love?
No.
Okay, great people across time use pointer sticks. That's my point there, right? Yeah, right? This is PowerPoint slide before PowerPoint slide. He's using his pointer stick to show what's going on. Well, from this, Congress issues what is known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution authorizes the president to conduct military operations in Southeast Asia without a formal declaration of war. Literally another not war. The Vietnam War, so-called war, was never a declared war. Actually, this country has not declared war since World War II. All the wars we've been in, we have not declared a war on a foreign country since World War II. So this is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. I certainly don't expect you to read it all. This is a marked change in U.S. policies, placing troops on the ground without a declaration of war. Marked change in U.S. policy, totally breaking from George Washington. Do not get involved in foreign entanglements. Here we have ourselves getting very involved in foreign entanglements. This is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. And look at my Mickey finger there. What is it pointing at? What do you notice?
Expiration date.
What expiration date?
I can't see that.
There isn't one. Right? So what you're pointing at, this is a blank on the document. And I know it says it right there. What should have gone right there would have been an expiration date. The president is authorized to use troops for 60 days. The president is authorized to use troops until the end of the year, December 31st. The president is authorized to use troops for a whole year, whatever. There was no expiration date. Big mistake on the part of Congress, because what it's going to lead to is one of the longest, seemingly endless wars in American history. So very interesting that there's literally not an expiration date on this particular resolution. That's going to lead to us being in Vietnam for the next decade. So from all this, 1964 to 1968, troop strength grows up to 500,000 men. That's 500,000 by 1968. We had advisors in Vietnam as early as 1955. This is coming off of decades of the Vietnamese. They first fought the British, then they fought the French. We got advisors in Vietnam. We got like some special forces teams. They're helping with language. They're helping train other troops. But we don't have a massive amount of troops until 1964. So a lot of times the Vietnam War will trickle all the way back to 1955. The first American dies in Vietnam in 1958. But it really ramps up our participation in Vietnam in 1964. By 1968, there's 500,000 Americans in Vietnam. In response, the Soviet Union and China, those two big communist countries, they start supporting the North. So here again, we have a darn near identical setup to Korea. The South is supported by us, United States, capitalism, democracy, and the North is supported by the communists. So you don't even have to rememorize anything else. South and North is the same for both of these conflicts. Here's that nice, tidy definition, the United States involvement in Vietnam. We get involved in Vietnam at the request of South Vietnam in order to protect from a communist takeover by North Vietnam. Communist to take over by North Vietnam. So that's a real simple summary of what we're doing in Vietnam. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but that is a simple summary. Leads me to the only way I know how to introduce you to the Vietnam War, which is a couple minutes out of Forrest Gump. Obviously a fictional movie, but it is remarkably accurate in some of its depictions, not the events, but the equipment, the strategies, the background, all that kind of stuff is relatively accurate. So I'm going to show us about 3 minutes of Forrest Gump in Vietnam, hopefully set the scene for you for the rest of our conversation here.
I got to see a lot of the countryside. We would take these real long walks.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Said a joker to the me.
And we were always looking for this guy named Charlie. It wasn't always fun. Lieutenant Dan was always getting these funny feelings about a dock or a trail or the road. So he'd tell us to get down, shut up. Get down, shut up. So we did. I don't know much about anything, but I think some of America's best young men suffer this war. They Dallas from Phoenix. Cleveland, he was from Detroit. Hey, what the hell's going on? The Tex, well, I don't remember where Tex come from.
Welcome to the United States. I got 10 things to go down river. Come out.
The good thing about Vietnam is there was always some place to go.
Fire in the hole.
Pay attention to this. Talk about it in a second.
And there was always something to do. One day, it started raining, and it didn't quit for 4 months. We've been through every kind of rain there is. A little bit of stinging rain, big old fat rain, rain that flew in sideways. Sometimes rain even seemed to come straight up from underneath. Shoot, it even rained at night.
Hey, George, I'm gonna lean up against you. You just lean right back against me. This way we don't have to sleep with our heads in the mud. You know why we a good partnership for? Because we be watching out for one another. Like brothers and stuff. Hey, folks, something I've been thinking about. I got a very important question to ask you. How would you like to go into the shrimping business with me?
Okay.
Man, I'll tell you what, I got it all figured out too. So many pounds of shrimp to pay off the boat, so many pounds for gas. We can just live right on the boat. We ain't got to pay no rent. I'll be the captain, we can just work it together, split everything right down the middle. Man, I'm telling you, 50-50. And hey, folks, all the shrimp you can eat.
That's a fine idea. Bubba did have a fine idea.
You want the best for your.
All right. You know, you saw a lot there. What's something that stood out to you?
Him getting stuck in that hole.
Okay, getting stuck in the hole. You know what those are called?
Yeah.
Tunnels. Yeah, they're called tunnels. And then the type of people that would go in the hole, you know what they're called?
Tunnel rat.
Tunnel rats. Excellent. And that's what we're going to talk about in a second as well. What else stood out to you? The rain. Yeah. The rain and the rain and the. I've been on that patrol. I told you I feel like I've been on that Korean War patrol and walked up on them on the fog. I've been on that rainy patrol as well. It ain't fun. What else? What type of people did you see?
Different colors.
All sorts of people. That's right. Black and white. College educated maybe and not. From, say it, different parts of the country, except for Tex. I can't remember where he's from. Yeah, so entirely fictional, right? Don't get it twisted. Forrest Gump is a fictional story, but the representation on the screen there, pretty accurate. Some of the things are pretty accurate, so I use that as our opener to talk about the Vietnam War. I already said same setup, North versus South, the communist North versus the Democratic South. Vietnamese are led by a pretty foundational leader named Ho Chi Minh. Just like the early Continentals had George Washington as a strong leader, well, Ho Chi Minh was a strong leader for the communists. I didn't say good leader, I said strong leader. Doesn't mean he was a good guy, but he was a strong leader. He had a lot of experience. Just like George Washington had a lot of experience, Ho Chi Minh first fought the Brits, then fought the French. So by the time the Americans rolled around, he's in his third decade of fighting. What do you think his attitude is? Next man up, not ready to quit. He's like, whatever, one more invader, let's go. Americans, you know, who are they? Let's fight them. So he had a lot of experience, and he was very inspirational to the North Vietnamese army. He was supported by China and the Soviet Union. He was given resources and soldiers and equipment, and he leads what is called the Viet Cong. VC, Viet Cong, is going to be the nickname for the North's army. And the strategy of fighting in the Vietnam War is going to be guerrilla warfare. Now, we've talked about guerrilla warfare before. Not gorilla, but guerrilla warfare. What is guerrilla warfare? Indian style fighting. Hiding. Surprise attack, ambush style attacks, exactly right. The colonists, the patriots, used this in the American Revolution. Well, let me tell you, the jungles of Vietnam lends itself to guerrilla warfare. It is not surprising at all that these the North Vietnamese use guerrilla warfare strategies. Very often, they would not even wear a uniform. They would do their attacks hiding behind the trees in the jungle. They'd fade back into the jungle, maybe even back to the population. They're not even wearing a uniform, so who knows who just shot at them. Very, very frustrating style of war for the Americans to try to combat. This war was not like the last. We're coming off of World War II, open land warfare in Europe. Jungle hopping, or island hopping and some jungle warfare in the South Pacific, but not quite as thick as these jungles here in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. So what worked in the last war is not necessarily going to work in this war. The enemy of the last war is not the same as the enemy of this war. So we got to relearn a whole lot of lessons. We got to break some old habits. We're going to see how that goes for us. Damp, hot, wet, definitely not the same as the last war. Rain. So did Forrest Gump get it right? Yeah, rain, flooding, needing to do some sandbags. The Americans like to, what do you think Americans like to bring to the battlefield? What do we like to do as a people group? Broad encompassing term. We love ourselves some technology, right? Don't we love ourselves some technology? Well, in technology, a war-making technology at the time, tanks. Hey, tanks worked in Europe. Tanks worked in the last war. You know what? Let's bring some tanks to Vietnam. We're going to roll right over these bad guys. How did the tanks work for the Americans? Obviously not very well. This tank literally got stuck in the mud. We found that tank tracks do not navigate the jungle and navigate bogged down, soggy, wet rice paddies quite like they do the open warfare, open land areas of Europe. So many American tanks got stuck and just stayed in Vietnam. I don't know if this thing is a tourist attraction and people stop and take pictures with it, but this is a real American tank that is in Vietnam to this day. Now, caveat that with saying technology also works for us. The Vietnam War sees the beginning of helicopter warfare. It's the new horse. It's the new way to arrive to the battlefield. Formerly, cavalry charges would be on horseback, right? Well, this is the new horse. It takes soldiers to faraway battlefields, farther than they could walk on their own 2 feet, delivers them there, picks them up, takes them back home, useful for evacuating dead and injured, casualties as well. So helicopter is going to be a positive technology that gets brought to the war. This shows how the guerrillas knew the land. They had a reason to fight as well. They're fighting for their homeland. And since they've been fighting for decades, since the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese have been fighting for decades, first the British, then the French, they have a network of underground tunnels. Much like the trench warfare we talked about in World War I, the longer the war went, the more built up the trench system got. They had dugouts for sleeping, dugouts for the officers to lay their maps on the table, all that kind of stuff. Same thing here. Decades of fighting in Vietnam has led to a very extensive tunnel system. Now, when you look at this picture here, I think this is after the war. I think this is more like a tour guide kind of a thing. The tunnels still exist. They are still there. They have not collapsed. They have not been filled in. Much of the tunnel network is still there. What do you notice about this fella? Like, what stands out to you about his actual body? He's skinny. The Vietnamese were a smaller type of human. Their genetics, the way they've been bred over time, they are a smaller human being. Look at my shoulders. I'm a husky fella. I don't think I could fit in that hole. Like, I don't think that I could fit into that hole. So if I am an average American and I can't fit into that hole, but they're skinny fellas, what kind of an advantage does that bring them? Huge advantage. We can't get into their tunnel network. We can't find them. We very often think that big and muscular is the best. And while strength may have some advantages, don't overlook the little guy, right? I can make a David and Goliath analogy, whatever you need me to do. Don't overlook the little guy. Just because he's not some behemoth that you're going to see in the MMA octagon doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. With a hole like this, you even see the cover, you see the rooftop there. What do you think a strategy or a tactic would be for these guys to shoot at the Americans? Pop up, shoot, and then what? Immediately pop back down. By the time the Americans got oriented to wherever the shots were coming from, where's he? Down. Yes. So this tunnel system contributed to the guerrilla warfare fighting is very successful for the Viet Cong. See here how tiny that hole is. And, again, someone like myself, average sized American, probably couldn't even fit into it. Now leads me to where I mentioned Forrest Gump. For some Americans who were tasked to go clear out the tunnels, how did they go about doing it? They're called tunnel rats. How did they go about doing it? I think I heard several different versions. Very similar to what you saw with Forrest Gump. One, they would take a pistol, not a rifle. Rifle's too long. You can't navigate a rifle inside of this skinny little hole. So you take a pistol, probably take a flashlight with a little bit of a reverse grip like this. You go in head first. You think skinny thought to be as skinny as you could. Go in head first and wiggle worm your way on down that tunnel, just like Forrest Gump did. He kind of had his butt like hanging out. But skinny guys, if you were the skinny guy in the platoon, this was probably your job. If you were the tinier guy, not that bulking, muscular guy that I just mentioned, this was probably your job. You were a tunnel rat. How many, what were some dangers you think tunnel rats faced? Yeah, high casualty rate. I don't have a statistic for you, but definitely a high casualty rate. It could collapse. You could run right into the enemy, right? They could just be waiting for you. So the tunnel rat, he would shoot anything he saw. What if there was a family seeking refuge inside that tunnel? He turns the corner, flashlight hits some people. What's he going to do? Most likely going to shoot them because for him it's kind of a survival thing. He doesn't know what's there. He can't take time to identify friend versus foe. If you're in the tunnels, you're probably a bad guy. So there are some unfortunate incidents and atrocities that would happen like that. We're going to talk more about some atrocities that happen at the hands of the Americans as well. This shows how extensive the tunnel networks were. It wasn't only a skinny little tube area. They would open up into basically life underground. They had full-on camps set up underground. So that's the tunnel system. Leads me to one more thing, one more very frustrating tactic that the Americans had to deal with. Hey, pick your head up for me. The couples of you that have your head down, nudge your neighbor. Head up, stand up, or do push-ups. Head up, stand up, or do push-ups. I'm talking about military stuff today, so I'm kind of military-minded. Another very frustrating tactic for the Americans, very harsh tactic used by the enemy, is called Punji stick pits. Anybody know what this is and can try to explain it to me? It is definitely a booby trap.
Aren't they like
Sharpened bamboo sticks.
they cover it up and
Cover up, you step on it. Yes, I think we're there. So this is actually a punji stick pit. This is more of a drawing of a punji stick pit. So what would happen? It would be dug out into the ground. Sharpened bamboo sticks, just like Josh said. Look at that there. That's sharpened bamboo sticks. And it would have a false covering on the top. Sturdy enough that it covered the whole pit, but if a 200-pound person like myself stepped onto it, it was never meant to hold weight. My weight is going to take me through the rooftop, and then what's going to happen?
You're going to get punctured.
Punctured is a fabulous word. I love that. I'm going to get punctured. Now, these punji stick pits very often did not kill an individual. It wounded them. And believe it or not, a wounded soldier is harder to care for than a dead soldier. So they were actually purposefully wounding soldiers because then they knew the Americans had to carry them off the battlefield. It would slow them down, maybe cause another ambush. So they were purposefully wounding soldiers, trying to slow down the Americans. Obviously, it's also a surprise tactic. Every step I take in the jungle, I'm now scared about stepping on a booby trap. So it plays with the head a lot as well. One more thing, you got your ooh face ready? Sometimes they would poison the tips of these sticks. Sometimes with poison dart frogs, okay, the poison that comes off of that animal, the poison dart frogs, maybe with venom from snakes, right? They would milk the snake and put the venom of the snake on it. Maybe a poisonous plant. But in a pinch, if they didn't have any of those animals or plants around, they could use human fecal matter, poop. Literally would smudge poop onto the end of this sharpened stick. And then when it punctures you, what is fecal matter, bacteria, it infects the wound. So literally a slow death, injury, and a slow death from these punji stick pits. So this is how the enemy fights. Extremely frustrating to the Americans. Very different from World War II. And a lot of people are wondering why we're in Vietnam in the first place. Leads to a variety of, there's some harsh pictures here, and it's already on the screen. You put your head down if you want to. A lot of Americans were accused of attacking civilians. It's very hard to tell who was the enemy. Sometimes there are incidences of whole villages being gunned down as being accused of protecting the enemy. But women and children and old men who are outside of the military age being gunned down, that is not waging war. That is murder. That is murder. Genocide is a good word, murder. So the Miley Massacre, M-Y-L-A-I.
How many people died?
The Miley Massacre, great question, Haven. I think 400 plus died at Miley.
Okay.
That is one village, sister. That's one village. There are incidences across the Vietnam War where Americans gunned down innocent Vietnamese. The Vietnamese were seen as less of a human. The Vietnamese were seen as not as worthy of life as Americans. This is a terrible
So
attitude.
why did we protect them then if that was?
Well, the enemy. So there's the North Vietnamese, and that's a thing in war. Okay, dehumanizing your enemy, giving them nicknames, giving them negative attributes and behaviors. So, but remember, I'm not justifying it in the slightest. But remember, every step you take in the jungle might be met with something like a Punji stick pit. So clearly, there are animosities on both sides of the war. How do you think it's going over at home? I think Americans are acting at home.
They do not like it at all.
Yeah, they don't like it at home. One, Americans are being drafted into the military. Americans are not getting a choice as to whether they want to serve or not. You guys today have 100% choice as to whether you volunteer for the military or not. We'll have the recruiters come, they'll throw you some lanyards, they'll try to tell you about college benefits, but in the end, it is your choice whether you volunteer for the military or not. Everyone in the military today is volunteer. Back then, that is not the case. It was called mandatory service or compulsory service via the draft. This is literally how individuals would learn that they had to join the military. They crank this hopper, this lottery hopper. Each of those capsules has a date inside of it. My birthday is January 17th. If he reaches in and pulls out January 17th, my number just got called. Everybody with that birthday is now drafted into the service of a certain age. Like all 18-year-olds, January 17th, 1988, boom, you are drafted into service. So it was almost like a game show, right? We're talking about people's lives here, but people are being drafted by this lottery system almost like it's a game show. This leads to a variety of protests all around the country. Left-hand side, that's Washington, D.C., right-hand side, that's California. So it just goes to show it coast to coast. Americans are turning on themselves. We're fighting over the fighting. It was a very unpopular war. The Vietnam War was a very unpopular war. Leads me to the year 1968. 1968 is a landmark year in America for a lot of reasons. And at that, though, I'm going to hit the pause button so we can go to the bathroom.
Appreciate it, guys. I'm at home games since birthday.
Come back. We're going to blast through 1968. And then we're going to get to nuking ourselves in the gym.
When we get to the space race, that's tomorrow.
And like spit on him and like try to pull his hair and try to like hurt him.
We doing the space race tomorrow?
No, today.
Today's the space race?
You sir. I can get to
Door.
He said people were spitting on him coming out the airport.
What's tomorrow?
Domestic issues at home. It's tomorrow. Why are you so worried about tomorrow? Let's get through today.
I've already prayed today.
The Brindley County Raiders?
We got practice 3.5 hours today.
For what?
We
Y'all
got
practice at 6. What the y'all?
we got back from 3:30 to 7 today. I think.
Joe was like, we get the big good.
That's our every day.
That's what I'm saying. Y'all complain. Y'all keep complaining. We practice every day.
We practice every
3 to 6. 3 to 6:30. Oh, it got hot in here. Why? Like a 1 degree difference.
I know I missed it. Thanks for stating the obvious.
We are going to throw nuclear warheads at ourselves if we get to it.
Oh, I was about to do somebody.
You.
You're dead.
You're done. Wind it up. That
And
arm.
whose clip is that?
You got
She
news.
got Tourette's.
It's mine. Dude,
Yeah, Tourette's. I've seen that before.
yeah, I've seen that too.
I know.
You're not. And then she started.
She's like, I know.
Whatever. She started feeling that with her mouth.
Are y'all making fun of her?
The girl with Tourette's on TikTok, she'd be like, why not randomly?
Yeah.
She'd be trying to talk about something different. Why not? Yes. I know.
Her videos.
Just take the rest down here.
You just gotta watch them. They're pretty. I can't
I
find
think,
something.
no, I hope that it's meant to be funny.
I hope so.
Is it
I laugh
real?
so hard.
Is
It's
it
like
real?
randomly.
Yeah.
Does she actually have one?
She can be like my grandma died.
Yes.
One does like randomly.
Yeah. She be, no, did you see the one that, the
And
one
then we
that
try to
like,
make like cakes.
she was at the restaurant.
It's like trying to
Yes.
And she was like,
She's so
it's funny though.
Yeah, I would hate that Tourette's. Imagine being at church and Justin.
Just imagine her trying
Matt bustle up. Tourette's. You just let her. What the? Imagine you're watching and trying to make fun of someone like you ain't thinking I've seen that already. I was like, yeah,
Exactly.
you're a teacher. You can't make it.
I don't think he was making fun of
Well,
her.
I had to get my hair done.
He just didn't know where it came from. He probably smelled it. You just missed the whole thing.
All right. Hey, I'm aware when I get energized on certain topics, I'm going to go a little faster. 1968, big year in American history. Starts off with the Tet Offensive. Tet is a Buddhist holiday for New Year. Vietnam is a largely Buddhist country, so it's the most important holiday in Vietnam. The Americans assumed that the Vietnamese would be taking a break on their most holy of holidays. Now, I'm ashamed of this because our own country is hinged upon a Christmas night attack. Father of our country attacks on Christmas night. He doesn't take it off. But that's not the attitude we had at the time. We were like, these guys are probably going to take a break for their holiday. We're going to let our guard down a little bit. I'm ashamed to say the military units kind of let our guard down a little bit. And that means we were caught off guard, caught by surprise by this series of attacks by the North Vietnamese. Now, it wasn't just one attack. It wasn't some massive invasion. It was a series of attacks over 100 different cities or forts, sites, over the course of a lengthy amount of time, over the course of about a month. So the Tet Offensive is this organized attack by the North Vietnamese. What's notable about it is that it was shown on television. Many of the events, many of the images of the Tet Offensive were shown on television. It was showing that the Americans were in fact losing the war, and that decreases the support for the war at home. So television in this case is used to decrease support for the war at home. Super briefly, this shows how the attacks happen from across the border. The brown area, this is North and South Vietnam. Actually, this is all just South Vietnam. See, the Americans are only involved in South Vietnam. Cambodia and Laos, those are two other countries. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution doesn't say that we can be fighting in Laos or Cambodia. The Americans are bound by this border. The North Vietnamese, on the other hand, are not bound by this border. So they very often would stage in Laos or Cambodia and attack across the border only to go right back across it. And the Americans, for the most part, were not allowed to follow them back across the border. So one of those very frustrating tactics where the enemy could just retreat back across the border and we couldn't necessarily follow them. This is how a lot of the Tet Offensive attacks occurred. See, we're at this place where the U.S. forces are unable to defeat the enemy, and the enemy is unable to overwhelm the Americans, unable to drive out the Americans. So we have ourselves, yet again, at a stalemate. We talked about Korea yesterday. It stalemated along what parallel? 38th parallel. Back, forth, stops at the 38th parallel. More or less, we have a similar situation here. We cannot overwhelm the enemy. We can't even find them most of the times. They are not strong enough to drive us out. They're just hanging on. Stalemate. Something else that's going on is that the American public, or rather the American government, generals and elected leaders are lying about how the war is going. They're inflating body counts. If we killed 3 of the enemy, they would say we killed 30. If you were to look at the numbers, you'd think we're winning the war. Oh yeah, we're really sticking it to them over there in Vietnam. Well, the Tet Offensive being shown on television starts to show that, in fact, we are not winning the war. General William Westmoreland, he asked for 200,000 additional troops. He says, we need more soldiers to overwhelm the enemy. This is how we're going to win the war. If you're already at home, if you're a college kid, and your number might get called, are you in favor of 200,000 more troops? No. If your brother has already died and you don't know why, what is Vietnam? I don't even know where that is. Are you in favor of 200,000 more troops being called up? Yeah, so this is very unpopular in the American public, asking for more troops to go fight a war that we didn't even know why we were fighting it in the first place. Here's the thing. The communists were not on the edge of defeat. Westmoreland is trying to say, give me 200,000 troops and we'll win. They are not on the edge of defeat in the first place. And it just really showed how much of a mischaracterization the war had been so far. Government officials are saying we're winning, when in fact we are definitely not winning. And these televised scenes of street fighting coming into American homes really showed how bad it was. Here's a picture of what was going on in the streets of Saigon. Now, the guy with the gun, he's actually South Vietnamese, right? That's the side we're supporting. The guy that he's shooting at, and this is moments before the shot is fired, okay? Actually, I take it back. It's like a moment after the shot is fired, but it's really good photography. That guy that's getting shot, he's accused of having murdered a South Vietnamese colonel. So is he the bad guy? I mean, maybe he's on the enemy. He's from the enemy, right? But in America, are we in favor of executions in the street? Are we in favor of justice in the courtroom, due process? Yeah, we can't stand for that. Here's a colorized version, pretty powerful photography. This is the kind of stuff that was coming into the American living room. And Americans, the average American who didn't understand really what was going on in Vietnam, sees a photo like this, and they're like, look at this guy right here. I love his reaction. He's like, ooh. They're like, what's going on in Vietnam? Why are we a part of this war in Vietnam? Here's a picture of Americans sitting in their living room. I love the contrast here, right? White collar dad, he's got his shirt and tie. He's probably been at the office all afternoon. But what they're watching on their television screen, soldier, gun, person dying in the streets, they're like, whoa, what is going on in South Vietnam? This is a very famous photograph that was in Time magazine. You got to think that communication back then wasn't quite the same as it was today. A lot of times people got updates about their loved ones based off of photographs. So imagine opening Time magazine, seeing this picture, and this is your son. This is your neighbor. This is the kid you taught in 10th grade last year. That's how a lot of Americans were getting their information. And this image is not what our president was saying. Our president is saying we're winning the war. Things are going great. This image says the opposite. Very famous quote, very influential quote, comes from Walter Cronkite. He was a respected media man, and like a good journalist, he went to where the story was. He didn't just sit back in his newsroom. He went to where the story was. He said on national TV, he said, it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. That soured a lot of people's attitudes towards the war. They're like, wow, if Cronkite thinks we're not going to win, then we ain't never going to win. We need to get out of Vietnam. So that's a pretty powerful quote right there. United States government said we're nearing victory, but that is not the case. In the end, the Tet Offensive is going to have a very big impact on the 1968 presidential election. Johnson decides to not run. He could have. He was eligible for another term in office, but he decides to not run because he's tired. I love this picture. Have you ever just rubbed your forehead whenever you're exasperated? He's tired. He's war-weary. He's not going to run for re-election. He probably would have won, right? As president, as a Democrat in office, he probably would have won re-election. But since he doesn't run, it opens the door to a new candidates. And in the end, we're going to have Richard Nixon win, and the war is going to take a different turn because of Richard Nixon winning. So Nixon campaigns on ending the war. He says, elect me president, we'll get out of Vietnam. So naturally, he promptly escalates the war, right? Politicians. He says, I'll end the war, but instead he escalates the war. Fast forward kind of to the end here. Oh, well, Vietnam War at home, there's still many protests. There's stories of shots being fired at universities, which is at home, right? We thought we were fighting a war over there. How come we're shooting each other at home? Great story, well, terrible story about Kent State University. I don't have time to tell it to you right now. Overall, makes the war extremely unpopular. Now it's the end of 1973. Okay, fast forwarded several years. President Nixon wants to end the war. This time, for real, he wants to end the war. See, the Vietnam War has given us a black eye on the world stage. Not a lot of other countries want to do business with us. Not a lot of other countries want to associate with us. We went from a world superpower to now we're just that country that can't even beat the guerrillas in Vietnam. So he kind of wants to reestablish positive relationships with leaders around the world, and he wants to tidy up. He wants to heal things at home. He wants to heal the protesting at home. So Vietnamization is the policy for getting out of Vietnam. You can see here another guy with his pointing stick. This is the low count of troops. This is the high mark of troops, 549,000. And then you can see here the goal is to be back to a low number of troops by December of 1972. Pretty common sense map there. But what he's saying is this is Vietnam's problem at this point. North and South, they're going to have to fight it out as a civil war. The goal is for the Vietnamese to take over the fighting. We came, we tried, we supported with equipment, we supported with money, we supported with people. It's time for the Vietnamese to take over their own war. To be honest, very similar to what I experienced in Afghanistan. We were wanting to draw down as well. This is all the way back in 2013. That's over, it's a decade ago. But my goal was to train the Afghans to do my job. My goal was to work myself out of the job, hand the war over to the Afghans, hand the country back over to the Afghans. So, history repeats itself a lot of times. Vietnamization is not all that different from what I personally experienced in Afghanistan as well. Leads to the Paris Peace Agreement. I'll summarize all those words. In 1973, we said, hey, Saigon, sign this peace accord and we will not abandon you. Sign this peace accord and we will not abandon you. The government of South Vietnam does sign this peace accord, which means that we promptly abandoned them in 1975. Right? True history is uncomfortable. True history you got to wrestle with. I'm not telling a happy American story here. I'm kind of talking about one of our black eyes. We swore to the Vietnamese that we will not abandon you. But in 1975, that's exactly what we did. We abandoned it. Saigon falls to the north. Today, there is not North and South Vietnam. It is just Vietnam, and it is a communist republic. It is a communist country. So we genuinely lost the Vietnam War. We did not contain communism in Vietnam. Vietnam fell to communism. So it's nice to have a policy of containment. It's nice to say we're going to draw the line. But in the end, the war is over, but communism took over Vietnam. This is a picture of the U.S. Embassy being evacuated in Saigon. This is literally the last helicopter out of the embassy. How desperate do you think those people were to get on that helicopter? Clamoring to get a seat on that helicopter. This is a super powerful side-by-side. This is the last helicopter out of Saigon, 1975. This is one of the last helicopters out of Kabul, Afghanistan, 2021. Very powerful, almost identical images. Really does show how history kind of repeats itself. So here's the big summary. Here's that big summary of the Vietnam War. We got involved to stop the spread of communism. We sent aid. We moved up to training. We moved into actual combat with a peak of 500,000 soldiers, more than 500,000 soldiers. The involvement was more costly than the American public was willing to bear. The cost was too high. We had to come home. Politically speaking, there was no other choice but to end the war, and that is what happened. I told you yesterday about the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial in Washington, D.C. It's this black wall, shiny black granite wall, where the names are etched inside of it. 58,000 names are on the Vietnam Wall. Starts in 1958, goes up to 1974, I believe, is when the last person died in Vietnam, maybe 1975. 58,000 names. Americans, sons and daughters, men and women. Their names are etched into this wall. Very powerful photo here. The wall is a place for healing for Vietnam veterans. Vietnam veterans were not received well at home. Vietnam veterans were very often called baby killers. They weren't doing anything other than what their political leaders sent them to do. There are atrocities that come out of Vietnam. The Miley Massacre is a bad example of humanity. But the average soldier was just doing what he was sent to do, not committing crimes. And I'm not just saying he was just following orders and committing crimes. He was not committing crimes. But a lot of soldiers came home and were spat upon, were shunned. A lot of them had trauma. PTSD is what we might call it today, but they were unable to deal with it because the public did not receive them well. So the wall is kind of a place of healing. Obviously, this is a piece of art, but it's pretty powerful. Shows how he's reaching out and touching his friends, and they're reaching out and touching back. Sure, of course, I showed you how I visited the wall, and I told you about the 3 soldiers as well. You may not be able to go to Washington, D.C., but I've advertised this many times in this class, the Veterans Pavilion right next to Dairy Queen. I would challenge you, next time you're getting a meal at Dairy Queen or a Blizzard, whatever, take that Blizzard, step across the street, and go check out, go reflect on who's been a veteran from your city. These are not people who died. These are people who served from Alma, but it's a pretty cool little Veterans Pavilion right here in our hometown. Recommended movies about the Vietnam War, other than Forrest Gump, which is an all-encompassing U.S. history type of movie. We Were Soldiers is a true story. It's a book. Its characters are real. It's a powerful story starring Mel Gibson. Platoon is not a true story, but it represents a lot that was going on both at home and in Vietnam. What's the tagline of Platoon? Can you read those white words? First casualty of war is innocence. William Tecumseh Sherman would say? War is hell. Yeah, the first casualty of war is innocence. That's pretty powerful. 1986, winner of Best Picture. So you know it's a good movie starring Charlie Sheen. Just 2 recommendations for you. Moving right along. Space race. Simplest way to put it, symbolic competition between Cold War powers. In this case, a good competition. Even though we're competing against each other, everybody wins because scientific advancements, technology advances were made. Now, when we talk about winning the space race, what do you think about winning? How do you win a game? You put more points on the scoreboard. Well, if this is the scoreboard, Soviet flag versus American flag, who won the game? The Soviets seem to have put more points on the scoreboard. The Soviets had more firsts. First satellite, first animal, first photograph, first person, first woman. But guess what we have? Doing the floss over here because we put the first person on the moon. And that is what is really winning the space race. Not only did we put a person on the moon, but what did we do with it? We put it on television and we showed the world that we did it. So the Soviets had a lot of firsts. Seemingly they were winning the space race. But in the end, the Americans put the first person on the moon, put it on television, and that's what really is winning the space race. First dog on the moon there, his name is Laika. All right, first satellite. This is important. Sputnik 1, first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. It was launched into a low Earth orbit in October of 1957. Low Earth orbit is the same thing that Jeff Bezos did. When he went up in his little billionaire rocket ship, he orbited in a low Earth orbit. It's not deep outer space. It's not the International Space Station. It's just a low atmospheric orbit. Sputnik is literally, this is a picture of Sputnik. It is a 150-pound lead ball. It is not carrying a warhead. It is not a missile. It was not going to drop any bombs. It was just a 150-pound ball. But a lot of people did not know what it was. So when the headlines say that a Russian satellite is circling the Earth, what do you think people thought? Bombs away. Bombs are coming. Russian satellite is circling the Earth. It was a catastrophe in the heads of many, many people. There was mass hysteria. There was panic. People were convinced that it was a warhead. People were convinced that it was going to drop a bomb on their city tonight. Mass hysteria comes from Sputnik 1. From Sputnik 1, now we eventually realized it was just a lead ball orbiting the Earth, not carrying a missile, but we didn't know it at the time. From Sputnik, NASA is created. You guys know NASA. For whatever reason, NASA is like a popular logo that people wear on their t-shirts these days. You guys know NASA. NASA is created out of because of Sputnik. And there's a couple of other lasting influences of Sputnik. This is a portion on your page. I know this one's a little bit lengthier, but I want you to write all of these. From Sputnik, our country increases funding for science and math education. You go through your science and math curriculum today, Because of Sputnik. You are engaged in science and math and STEM, and I know today we even call it STEAM, because of Sputnik 1 in 1957. We realize we have to teach the next generation if we want to keep pace on the world stage. Creation of NASA inspired new technology. There's some negatives. There's an increased fear of missile attack as well. If they can put this ball into space, well, eventually they're probably going to put a warhead into space. That was the thinking. Finally, it leads to a variety of political policies being passed against the Soviet Union, sanctions and the like. They're the bad guys, so we're going to try to sanction them. A couple of y'all writing, but I know you have it in front of you, so I'm going to move on. This is literally what young students were taught to do in school. This is called the duck and cover drill. Get under your desk, duck, and as I like to say, kiss your butt goodbye, because there ain't no way that a duck and cover drill is going to protect from a nuclear warhead. But what do you think it made us feel like?
Safe.
Feel like we're doing something, right? So maybe we're safe. This is literally what people in school were taught to do in the 50s and 60s. Duck and cover. There might be an incoming bomb, so let's duck and cover. Just like we had a tornado drill the other day, duck and cover. So I think I don't think it was going to do much good, though. I think you're really just kissing it goodbye at best. Recommended movie, Hidden Figures, also a book. Hidden Figures is the story, the untold true story of 4 black women and the space race. So period of time where African Americans were not getting the credit that they were due. But did you know the reason we landed on the moon was based on the mathematical calculations of these 4 ladies and many others. But these 4 ladies and many others contributed to the space race. So let's talk about the actual moon landing. The space race is, the actual victory is landing on the moon. Americans were fascinated by space. The goal became to land a man on the moon, send a man to the moon. President Kennedy, we haven't full on talked about him yet, but he's in our Cold War presidents. He sets a goal for the country that we should put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. He says this in 1962, so the end of the decade would be the 60s. Before the 60s run out, he wants to put a man on the moon. There's his full quote there. I believe we should commit ourselves to achieving this goal before the decade is out, landing a man on the moon, and, it's important, returning him safely to Earth. Not just going to send him up there and leave him there. We got to return him to Earth as well. So, July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 goes to show you there were multiple attempts. Apollo 11 was the first spacecraft designed to actually land on the moon. It was televised, and the United States symbolically wins the race by planting the American flag on the moon. It is shown on television. The words that come out of Neil Armstrong's mouth are, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." These are the 3 astronauts who were on Apollo 11. Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. Michael Collins, don't miss this. He was the one that piloted them to the moon. He did not set foot on the moon, but he stayed in the landing craft in order to help them get back to the shuttle. So I like to think that he kind of sacrificed his role of landing on the moon. He was an important teammate who was not selfish in wanting to land on the moon. He knew that his role was to pilot the aircraft so that the other 2 guys could land on the moon. So every now and then you got a backup support guy who might not be up front and getting all the publicity, but they're just as important member of the team. Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. Anybody want to guess where he went to college? No, you let me down. West Point, class of 1951, second man on the moon. Buzz Aldrin is fascinating. He is still alive today. He's still active today. He's very active on social media. These days, he wants NASA to take us to, anybody guess? Mars. That's right. His big motto is GYATM, get your butt to Mars. He wants us to go to Mars. This is Buzz Aldrin. Neil Armstrong took the picture, but this is Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin is the inspiration for none other than Buzz Lightyear himself. And the West Point History Department likes to say, at West Point, much of the history we teach is made by the people we taught. So yet another U.S. history personality goes to school at West Point. All right, U.S. involvement in Cuba. We're about to get up and go to the gym after I set this up. U.S. intervention to overthrow the communist dictator Fidel Castro leads to tensions between Cuba and the United States, eventually leading to the Cuban Missile Crisis and embargo of Cuba. Where's Cuba? Anybody?
Right, south.
South tip of Florida, how far away?
Right there.
80 miles.
It's right there.
About 90 miles. About 90 miles. Cuba is very close to Florida. And what happens is that the Soviet Union sends nuclear warheads to Cuba. How close then does the Soviet Union have warheads to the United States? Literally 90 miles away. Yeah, the Soviet Union now has warheads 90 miles away. Here's some satellite imagery that proves it to be true. Okay, we're spying on each other. We know that this is happening. Here's a satellite imagery. It shows, let's see here, launch positions, ready tent, trailers, missile trailers, etc. So there's a lot of proof that goes into this. This is an excellent map that shows the rings, the range rings for short-range missile, medium-range missile, and long-range missile. This is Cuba. This is 90 miles. This is Florida. If there are missiles in Cuba, this is what they can range based off short, medium, and long. The Soviet Union could not reach the United States from the Soviet Union. But if they have missiles in Cuba, they can surely they can now reach most of the United States, Canada, Mexico, even into Latin America as well. So here's what we're going to go do. You have on your desk a roll card. I think you got Atlantic Ocean. You have on your desk a map of the world. I want you to take both of these, and we're going to go to the gym. We're going to go onto the floor. I've already talked to the coaches. They know we're coming. So we're going to go onto the floor and just listen to my instructions after that. Please. No, we got enough time to do this. I know we do. All right, Austin, you need to take my American flag. David, will you get the laptop? You control the laptop.
All right, vlog.
All right, here we go. You got enough time?
I'm vlogging. All right, so we're going to the gym, and we don't know what we're going to do. Probably something dumb, like always. Yep. Oh, sorry. Are you Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah, I think everybody's
I'm Atlantic Ocean. Oh, that's supposed to be both?
Are we playing wall ball? Still my hair. I think we're playing wall ball. I'm scared. Feels good. I like smoke. I just got my hair done.
I didn't grab both my papers.
Good job. You were supposed to.
I'll be right
It's
back.
okay.
Gotta go.
It's okay.
Okay, never mind.
We can share. And if we it shall be okay.
I have a laptop.
I didn't even know
You were
I'm vlogging.
Either 3-point line. Atlantic Ocean. That's all of you. Spread out on the floor, but not inside the 3-point lines.
Okay.
Marley Macy, you are the Soviet Union.
I have a camera.
All right, listen.
All right, Atlantic Ocean, on your feet, on your feet, on your feet.
I'm setting this up.
Get that flag on the ground for me before you're.
Sam, you're in the way. You're like front and center. Okay, thanks. Wait.
Pull up Wednesday, 2:30.
Be there, hear about it.
Tennis.
Austin is the United States. Raise it up, raise it up. Austin's basketball goal is the United States. Mason Worley, there's what we got. They have a Soviet Union flag.
Domino's Pizza Hut.
Union. Jacqueline, who are you? Jacqueline is Cuba. Taylor, who are you? Turkey. Taylor is the country of Turkey, not double. She's the country of Turkey. Now, everybody, look at the map that I'm giving you. Look at the map that I'm giving you. Locate the United States. It already has the range rings on it. Locate the Soviet Union. The big old landmass on the right-hand side of the page. Locate Cuba. It's where the Soviet Union flag is. That is as if to say, if the Soviet Union had missiles right there, that's where they would be. Now locate the American flag. That is on top of Turkey. We, in history, we say that the Soviets were trying to creep close to us by putting missiles on Cuba. Well, guess where the United States have missiles? In Turkey. Ah, good for the goose, good for the gander, right? So here's why it's significant. I need a ball. I need a big ball of shot ball. Obviously, that's enough. Come here. Now, from the Soviet Union, land this nuclear warhead on the United States. No, from the Soviet Union, land this nuclear warhead on the United States. Oh, hey, Harrison, hold your paper up. Kale, what are you? What are you? What are you? Where did that nuclear warhead land? In the Atlantic Ocean. So if you fire a nuclear warhead from the Soviet Union, with strength like Sanaa has, big muscles like Sanaa has, do you still have any chance of landing in the United States? Answer is no, right? This is the point I'm making. Now, Sanaa, bring yourself all the way to Cuba. Why don't you bring yourself all the way to Cuba? Give her that nuclear warhead back. Bring yourself all the way to Cuba. Cuba is like a lower block from which you distribute a player versus when it's not on the roll. Hey! Guess what? If that's a nuclear warhead, what just happened to Kansas City? There is no more Kansas City. Kansas City, yeah, that's what I thought. This is why the Soviet Union having a nuclear warhead in Cuba was of a great concern to the United States. But remember, good for the goose, good for the gander, Turkey is a little more than 90 miles away. It's not quite like just the back door like Cuba is, but Christian, come on. Christian from the Taylor is Turkey at the free throw line. Christian has a nuclear warhead in Turkey. Christian, go ahead and drop that on the Soviet Union. Hold your flag up, ladies. No. I mean, come on. Throw the free throw line. One more time. Next. Oh, what did you get it? The point is the United States had nuclear warheads in Turkey, and that was the direction of the Soviet Union. So if you were in on that, you want to end on a make. Put him on the spot. It is a volleyball. Like, to be fair, it's a volleyball. Bro, it's too hard. You got so much muscle. Did you make it on the first one? Oh! Now, check out. This is the donation moment. If you were both of these countries, and you have arrived at a standoff like this, Russia has nuclear warheads in Cuba, Jackson, raise your hand. The United States has nuclear warheads in Turkey, Taylor, raise your hand. If you are both of these countries, and you've arrived at a standoff like this, we are at the brink. How do we step away from the brink in this situation? Who's we? Everybody. Both countries agree to remove their missiles from each forward staging base. Meaning the United States moves their missiles out of Korea, and the Soviet Union moves their missiles out of Cuba. This is how the crisis is averted. This was a standoff for 13 days. The Cuban missile crisis lasted 13 days. I have to believe it was 13 very long days in the White House. At this time, Americans were getting news from their television. Much like we've paid attention to the Ukraine war develop on social media, the Americans were glued to their screens for 13 days. Some weird, kind of an interesting thing about the situation, hang on the ball for me, is that President Kennedy and his inner circle were responsible for most of the decisions. It was not decisions being made by Congress. It was not decisions being voted for by the American public.
It is a time where President Kennedy's leadership was crucial. President Kennedy and his inner circle were responsible for most of the decisions being made in these 13 days. I'll recommend the third movie of the day for you. It's actually the fourth movie of the day for you. There's a movie called 13 Days, starring Kevin Costner, and it is about the Cuban Missile Crisis. So with all that said, if anybody else wants to try to launch a warhead all the way to America, I'll let you try. We'll wrap up in about 2 minutes and get back to the factory. Good job. Clap for it. Clap for it. I think Marley got farther than tonight. Let me try. Take a shot if you want a shot. About 2 minutes, we'll head back.
Good class. I know you guys